Resistant starch. It's called resistant starch because it resists digestion in the stomach, and it skips the stomach and goes directly to the small intestine. That's why it's called resistant starch. So cooling starch is usually when you put any starch form in the fridge, cooling it down. Any type of starch, you cool it down, it will make it resistant starch. Like potatoes, for example. Potatoes, they have a lot of starch, but when you cool it down, you put it in the fridge, and that will make it resistant. The same thing with rice, the same thing with bread. When you cool them down, so it's better not to eat them right after you cook them. You have to eat them after you cook them and put them in the fridge for a while, and then you eat them. You could heat them up and eat them. So at least you will develop resistant starch. So this is how it works here now. They said how we lose weight from resistant starch, because when they enter the gut bacteria, they ferment this resistant starch to produce something called short chain fatty acids, which are important for the weight loss. How does short chain fatty acids help with weight loss? Here the same, because they are lower in calories. So short chain fatty acids are only 2 calories per gram, whereas carbs are only 4 calories per gram. So there's a calorie difference between carbs and short chain fatty acids. Only 2 calories per gram in comparison, so half the amount of calories compared to carbs. And I think the reason being because when they get digested by the bacteria, they're not absorbed directly, so they are being fermented. They're saying here because it's fermented rather than directly absorbed. Fermented, it means the bacteria is consuming these calories. So now you have a fermented product. So your body is absorbing less of the calories since you're feeding some of that calories to the bacteria. But the short chain fatty acid, I don't know if that has a lot of calories or not. I don't know. But this is their explanation here. So the short chain fatty acids, they also signal your liver and muscle tissues to burn fat rather than storing it. So that is a good signal for the brain, for the liver and the muscle tissues. Also, when you consume resistant starch, that will lower your insulin. Lowering your insulin can make stored fat more accessible to burn. So it's like a signal, I guess. It signals the body maybe to lower insulin means burn more fat. It's just telling your body to burn more fat. High insulin, store fat, right? High insulin level means you have too much sugar, you need to store fat. That is also a signal to the body. Enhances satiety. So it has the effect of enhancing the satiety. Impact on appetite and hormones. So how does it affect hormones? These short chain fatty acids interact with the lining of your colon. They stimulate specialized cells to release weight management hormones. So they interact with the lining of your colon. They stimulate specialized cells to release key weight management hormones. So they play a role in hormone management. Here's a summary of this. So they play a role in GLP-1. So they increase GLP-1. We all know GLP-1 is a peptide that um, slow down stomach emptying, so slows down the digestion, which when you slow down digestion signals fullness to the brain and improve insulin sensitivity. And then we have another peptide that it affects, which is called YY peptide, peptide YY or PYY. This also has an effect on appetite suppression, right? So these two peptides, the GLP1 and PYY, it increases them, and that's why you start losing weight. And then you have another hormone here, which is called the ghrelin, the hunger hormone. It decreases that. This is the hunger hormone, it's supposed to make you feel hungry, so it has an effect on decreasing it. How does it affect sleep and cortisol? Now cortisol, as I talked about before, cortisol affects weight gain as well. Affects stress make people gain weight. So how does it affect cortisol? Because when you manage the blood sugar spikes, when you have sugar crashes trigger a release of cortisol and adrenaline, right? When you have high cortisol level and adrenaline, then you have high blood sugar, right? And that high blood sugar turns into fat eventually if your body doesn't use it. By smoothing out, by leveling the glucose fluctuations, preventing sugar spikes, you could control the cortisol spikes. Control sugar spikes will help you control cortisol spikes. That's the idea here. And if you control cortisol spikes, then you are less likely to gain weight. So here is saying fermenting resistant starch strengthen the gut barrier. Reducing low-grade inflammation that typically keeps cortisol chronically elevated. So it has an effect on reducing inflammation. How? By strengthening the gut barrier. Because when they have leaky gut, you have a lot of inflammation. And we have a lot of inflammation, what happens? Cortisol levels become chronically elevated, right? So by strengthening that gut barrier, the fermentation of these resistant starch by bacteria, by the gut bacteria, can heal. That's what probably they're trying to say. It can heal your gut barrier, make it stronger, and that will reduce inflammation. When you reduce inflammation, it will keep the cortisol level down. How does it work on the sleep quality? Well, here's what it is. Resistant starch, again, what affects sleep is the blood sugar spikes. Because blood sugar spikes causes cortisol spikes, and that cortisol spikes could affect sleep. Alright, so that's the same idea here. Neurotransmitter productions. So what does it do? Short chain fatty acid like butyrate increases slow wave deep sleep by binding to gut receptors and promoting the vagus nerve to increase GABA serotonin activity in the brain. Because there is that gut brain connections through the vagus nerve, these short chain fatty acids, they act on this vagus nerve. That's what I think what they mean. In the gut receptors, that means the gut receptors affect the vagus nerve somewhat. I don't know which, it's not very specific here on what gut receptors is talking about, but I'm assuming here that these gut receptors have to do something with the vagus nerve. So they affect the vagus nerves in a way that increases the GABA serotonin activity in the brain, because the vagus nerve, I believe, it does connect the brain to the gut. Let's go here. So increasing GABA and serotonin, we know that hormone is essential for sleep. So now let's go down and see what else we have to learn today. So here are good food sources for resistant starches. Okay, lentil has a lot of carbs, rice, potatoes, and if you cook them and not eat them right away, just put them in the fridge and then heat them up later, then you could develop type 3 resistant starch. And that type 3 resistant starch will be good for weight loss, right? So don't cook the rice and eat it right away. Just cook it, put it in the fridge, let it cool down, and then take it out and heat it up, and that will give you some resistant starch. Same thing with any starchy food like lentils, potatoes. You do the same. Okay, so what else? Unripe bananas, green bananas. Unripe green bananas, they contain type 2 resistant starch. So now we have different types of resistant starch. I don't really know much about. I will learn later about it and make another video, I guess. Okay, whole foods contain fiber that feeds the bacteria, I guess. Whole foods will include something like lentils, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. They provide that level of digestive resistant fiber, which feeds the bacteria, of course. So eating whole food will create the short chain fatty acid. Whole food are good for short chain fatty acid beside resistant starches, right? Because they provide that fiber. That's what they are saying here, I guess. Yeah, this is the lesson for today.